Good day, lords and ladies, and welcome back to another post-commentary review of our Barony expedition with me, Cornish-Knight, and my associate, Dufurax. Now, last time we left off, we had just sort of gone deeper into the, I think it's like the castle, or the I think it's the dungeon of, well, this is all a dungeon, I think it's like the Forgotten Castle or whatever it is. As you can see, we are being hunted by the minotaur, so we decide to quickly leave this floor. I don't really like fighting the minotaur, to be honest. I know you can if you have the right equipment and training, but well. And here we are on the final chapter in our story. Now, last time, towards the end of it, we got a bit lost discussing various historical conditions and various bits and pieces, but we shall try and focus a bit more on the game. I mean, I shall still mention stuff and well, the reason what happened there basically was Dufurax accidentally aggroed the NPC, and the NPC went after him, and I don't think he had that much health, so I had to step in and cull the rebellious element in our group. And there you can see it, all the fantastic little trolls that lurk around this place. Now, these levels are really interesting, I'm sure you've seen before, because the amount of magical missiles that are flying out all over the place. And what shopkeeper will we get today, folks? Let us see. And it is a, I think it's like, was it a bookshop? I'm pretty sure it was, or was it scrolls? Nope, yeah, it's definitely scrolls. I always get a bit hard to read it on these things. Because I basically have my, when I'm doing the post-commentary stuff, I basically have the window minimized, so I can watch this and monitor my audio readouts at the same time. Just so it makes sure that everything's going perfect and swimmingly. Now, scroll shops are relatively useful. I mean, well, technically it was a bookshop, so you would have had magical books and bits and pieces, but the problem is neither of the characters we had were really magic users. Again, food poisoning, which is not particularly fantastic. It's interesting because, okay, look, I'll explain basically how the food mechanic basically works in the game, which is that you have fresh, aged, and rotten. And basically rotten food has I think it's a 50-50 chance of giving you food poisoning, give or take. Which is a real, like, dicey percentage to be rolling with. It's like saying, oh, 50% of the time you've got to be losing all your food, and if you've got hunger on, basically, if you lose all your food, it's really bad, because then you have to eat more food, and it's just... Sorry, having my order just unpleasant. So, it's a real sort of like balancing act. I mean, me and Dufurax turned well, we turn hunger off in the game, partly because... Right, what basically was happening here was I was getting chased by a demon. So what I was trying to do was I didn't particularly want to fight the demons, because the demons are pretty unpleasant. I'm pretty sure a gnome and a NPC met a tragic fate there, in a horrible mixture of violence and fireballs. Or maybe just a demon jumped them both at the same time and killed them. Dufurax was very kind enough to get me some very nice scrolls. But yeah, I believe it's here that I basically saw a really good trick, which is the whole basically aggroing the shopkeeper to kill enemy mobs, which is a really useful ability. If you can try and get that working, it's really quite a cool thing to do. I try and purify this fish using a basic remove curse scroll. It doesn't really work, to be honest. I don't know why. Maybe I should have had it on the floor and cast a spell on it. I don't know. I'm not really. I know how to use spells, but personally, I just chuck stuff. I mean, we haven't got hunger on in this game, so the best food can do is heal you a little bit. But I suppose I should have tried a bit harder. It's one of these balancing acts you find in a lot of Barony stuff. It's just trying to figure out what you should invest your items in. It's like, oh, so I keep this remove curse spell scroll in case I have a really good piece of armor that turns up but it's cursed. Because you can get that. You can get like blessed free cursed armor and weapons. It's like, oh, that would be really good if it wasn't cursed. But it's one of these hard things to balance, really. The Fuax is doing what the Fuax normally does at this point in time, which is basically exploring the rest of the room. I think we had killed off most of the enemies by this point, so he was basically doing his normal looting, and I not wishing to make it boring for you, the viewers, decide that I'm going to basically sort of go off and have a bit of explore, just see if there's anything I've sort of missed. You can see the demon in the background following me. I'm trying to aggro him towards the shopkeeper. Unfortunately, what I don't really realise at the time, well, I think I do realise it, I just don't, I sort of block it out at the time as I forget that the Fuax is still in the shop doing business. So what I do is I accidentally aggro, well, I don't accidentally aggro, I basically lure the demon into the shop, and as you can see, the Fuax is trying to push the shopkeeper into line of fire. And there's one aggroed shopkeeper. I do not believe you can kill the shopkeepers. I believe they actually are immortal, which is really, really useful because obviously demons in this game are annoying as anything. And that is the fire, or the burning animation you get on your characters when they are on fire. It's interesting that the axe, one of the hardest enemy, well, hardest like mobs in the game, is the shopkeeper. It's very much like Spelunky. If you haven't played Spelunky before, well, if you have played Spelunky before, you will know that basically one of the hardest enemies you will come across in the game outside of bosses are the shopkeepers, because they're literally armed with shotguns and completely wreck your face if you piss them off. Pardon my language. Yeah, I like that fact. It was one of the things that I always found frustrating about some games, which was they make the shopkeepers like, oh, the shopkeepers are normal NPCs, and then really unscrupulous players will go, okay, then I'll just kill you and take all your stuff because this isn't real life. And it's like, so you'd only do this because it's not real life? It's like, yep. It's like, that was one of the things I never understood, because when I sort of play, yeah, I had like literally a daft moment. I don't know what I was doing. I completely forgot that spike trap was there and got absolutely skewered. It's interesting. Spike traps are actually are really, I won't say common, but they were actually a pretty normal defensive trap. You see them a lot in like wars, and I believe they were used a lot in both the. They were definitely used in the medieval period. You had all kinds of nasty little, like for example, digging pits. Like one of the easiest anti-cavalry tactics in the medieval period was that you basically dug pits. You didn't have to put like sharpened pieces of wood in them or anything. You literally just dug pits, and the whole point was that the horses, when they were charging across open fields, if there was pits in them and you had covered the pits, just very basically the horses would step into the pits and basically break their ankles and break their legs, and it would basically, if enough horses this happened to, it basically caused the initial charge of the cavalry to basically be disrupted and slow down. And the thing with a knightly charge is that it's the whole momentum of that initial attack, because you sort of crash into the whole point of heavy cavalry is that you have like, they are the the precursors to shock and awe tactics, which is that heavy cavalry smashes in, like in a very tight formation, they will smash into an enemy unit or enemy group of enemies, and like the force of cavalry basically hitting someone is pretty immense. I mean, when you look at jousting videos, well, people jousting in tournaments or anything like that, in like reenactment tournaments or anything, they're basically hitting at the same speed as a 60-mile-an-hour collision, because a person on a horse is going at around 30 miles an hour, I believe, and so yeah, they're hitting with a speed of like 60 miles an hour total. And imagine a car, because I think if you think of it, a horse and a man in armour hitting you, going at 30 miles an hour, and then imagine sort of like a few hundred of those hitting you in a close formation, you're going to get crushed really, really easily. I mean, if you don't get skewered by a lance or get hacked by an axe, the initial charge is really going to mess you up. So they developed a lot of anti-cavalry tactics, which were based around disrupting cavalry charges. I mean, you have pits, obviously. You had what was it? They're basically these little spikes. They're like little triangles made out of 4 spikes. I can't remember what they were called. Basically they're like a little triangle made out of like 4 spikes, and the whole point is that wherever you throw them, they will always have a spike standing up, and you would basically no, I'm not thinking Morning Stars. Morning Stars are basically the flail weapon that's like iconic in lots of games, and in basically what a Morning Star is, it's basically a spike or basically a metal or wooden block on the end of a chain. Basically they're a member of the flail class of weapons. I can't remember, not cattle spike, no, but basically they used to throw them down, and it was designed that when cavalry charged, it would basically stick into the horse's feet and make the horse go lame. It's pretty nasty. I mean, the old thing was that it was easier to kill a horse than it was to kill the knight, so what a lot of people used to do, one of the tactics was that they used to try and kill the horses, so that the horses would dismount the rider, and then the knights would be relatively easy to finish off. Not because knights couldn't easily get up in wearing heavy armour, because that's basically a myth. They could actually quite easily get up. There's no point in wearing armour which is so heavy you can't move very easily. That's just basically a urban legend. They are if good quality armour, or at least someone who's been practicing in armour like a knight for most of his life, can quite easily manoeuvre in armour, so they can get up and do various manoeuvres in it quite easily. But the whole point is that when a horse throws someone, even if you're wearing armour, if you haven't broken anything, you're still going to be stunned, and in that time you're vulnerable for someone to come running up and stab you with a rondel dagger, or what rondel dagger is. Basically it's a nasty, wicked, like stiletto / spike dagger, and you basically jam it into gaps in their armour, or a dirk or something like that. You basically jab it into gaps in their armour and finish them off. It's being in armour is like, it's protective, but there are gaps like in your visor, so they're going to stab you through your visor into your face, especially probably your eyeballs or your mouth, or in your neck, or under your armpits, or in your groin, because there's basically wherever you think that you have to basically have a joint motion in armour, it's going to be where you're going to have a gap, and they're going to exploit it. It's not pleasant. But back to the game. I had been done in by a spike trap, and Defuax had been exploring and had generously covered most of my armour and equipment. So I was very, very grateful for. A good tip, even if you are trying to go melee in this game, have some kind of range ability, just so that you can engage the Baron, because it is possible to fight the Baron at melee. He's actually relatively weak melee stat-wise, but the problem is his magic is so massively overwhelming. Unless you build your character specifically for sort of like anti-magic close combat, you've got to get wrecked. So you have to be careful, I suppose. Now, there are many... see, look, I'm basically trying to figure out what weapon I want to take the Baron with. And I'm pretty much come to the conclusion that I'm going to take him with the... take him with a sword and seal combo. So I'm just sort of trying to get used to it and trying to get my bearings using this particular weapon setup. Now, so I'm still trying to remember what the anti-cavalry spikes were called. Now, it's in French, that's why I can't remember what it's called, so I'm just quickly looking it up. They were called caltrop. Yeah, there we go, iron caltrop. That's what they were called. Ah, I knew it. Also known as crow's feet. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just looking up them. It was on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't remember what they were called. Yeah, that was a pretty bad death in this game as well. This is basically what happens is a lot of the time I'm getting killed, so I'm only basically coming back with half health, which isn't fantastic. And also, what is not helping is the fact that my perception is low, as you can see in this death here, is that I'm running around in the dark. Because my perception is low, I'm not really being able to see a lot of stuff, and I'm just dying horribly to spike traps. Shows you that they work. I mean, historically they worked as well. Booby traps like spike picks and stuff were employed a lot in a number of conflicts. You see them in like modern conflicts as well. They are relatively effective because all you have to do is dig a pit and shove whatever you want to impale on someone. I mean, it doesn't actually even have to cause that much damage. That's one of the scary things about spike pits, is that you can literally just have them not lethal, but just coat the spikes in absolutely horrendous stuff, so that the person gets infections and unpleasant indeed.
Welcome to your doom.
So I sort of skipped forward past this particular death pit just because he was just just running around gathering equipment, and so I was just getting some gear back on. I haven't got that much gear, unfortunately. He didn't get all my stuff, so I'm literally just down to a helmet, a shield, and actually no wait, I tell a lie, he did get all my gear. I thought for a moment that he didn't have it, and I was panicking. But as you can see, I'm not particularly optimally ready to fight the Baron. I've only got half health. It was going to be a challenge, to be honest, but we give it our all, and you'll see the result of this. As I always say, it's good to have a ranged weapon to fall back on when fighting the Baron, just so that you can sort of drop his health down as far as possible, and then go in and finish him off with a melee weapon. It's a tactic I tend to use when fielding heavy melee kind of characters, but it has its own risks, obviously, because the Baron is very aggressive and has quite high magic damage. So if you're going to do this, you sort of need to know what you're doing. And in we go. Now, the problem with this fight I always find is that you need to have some poor person trigger the actual fight, which means someone has to go forward and touch the initial pillar where he's imprisoned. And as you can imagine, that is a rather dangerous thing to do, because the Baron is very quick and very aggressive. Now, one of the other problems that the Baron has, well, one of the other problems that people have while fighting the Baron is this. One, he summons imps and demons to associate himself to help him. Interestingly, you can get them to aggro on the Baron, I have learnt, by simply, if you have a reflection spell, if you have a good enough dodge ability, you can get them to aggro on the Baron and they will attack each other. We have seen this done several times in playthroughs, so it is possible to kill the Baron that way. But even so, it's a risky strategy because you're basically using a lot of your weapon's durability to do it. And as you can see, the Baron is pretty tough. Personally, I find the crossbow is one of the better ranged weapons in the game. Unlike the bow, which has a drawback time, the crossbows are relatively instant, which is nice. Downside of that is though your crossbows will literally go through their durability quite quickly, and as you can see by this point, my bow is broken and my magical staff is out of energy. I missed a shot quite badly, which is not fantastic. And his flickering all over the place is not great. Oh, I definitely break the bowing in the combat. I don't know where I do it. It must be coming up relatively soon. I'm pretty sure I broke it quite quickly into the combat. Maybe I had it longer than I expected. But it's one of the things you have to be aware of. You should probably bring backup weapons to this fight purely to do with the fact that they will break. I got quite lucky. I had a number of magic reflection gear on, which allowed me to bounce a lot of his spells back on him, which was nice. It also caused a lot of monster aggro. You can see like the imps, for example, are attacking him, because what's happened, he's cast an attack and I've reflected it back on the imps. The imps basically identify it as he's basically the one that's attacked them, which is nice, because then they basically stand there fighting each other, which is quite cool. And Defurax and I wondered a while ago if it was possible for his basically support, like his support mobs, to basically kill him. And we came to the conclusion that it should be relatively possible to do it. Yeah, as you can see, my gear is starting to wear down, and I am desperately trying to kill him. If I'd had like Excalibur or Odin's spear, or even like the talking mace, I could have probably killed him. And there you go, I get blown to bits, which is unfortunate. But we were relatively well equipped for this. I mean, we weren't on like a scale of 1 to 10 about how prepared we were for fighting the Baron. I'd sort of like give it like an 8. We had a lot of decent equipment, but not as powerful as we would have liked. We had like levitation amulets, which means that you can get over the pits, which is one of the main issues with fighting the Baron, is that if you lack levitation, you're limited to a rather predictable pattern which the imps and demons use, which can be rather limiting. I think the other problem was we didn't have nearly enough healing potions, or I mean, I went into the battle in half health, which you can imagine is not a particularly fantastic thing to do. I mean, Defurax, bless his cotton socks, put up a really sort of valiant fight. I reckon he must have picked up an amulet of transgenderization, because I'm pretty sure his character was female at the beginning of this playthrough, so he must have picked up an amulet of transgenderization. He might have even picked up the one I found. I found one, I believe it was like halfway through the catacombs in the room in the area with all the rooms where I got done in. I had just picked up an amulet of transgenderization there, so he might have picked it up off my corpse and used it. But like I've said, I don't really see the issue with playing female characters in games. If you're basically role-playing and you're just role-playing a female character, or the back history of the character is that she's female or something, I don't see an issue with it. It's sort of like, it's a game. The only difference in Barony is that if you're a male character, you get a +1 to your strength, and if you're a female character, you get +1 to your dexterity. That's it. It's not really anything to sort of cry home about. And to be honest, with the way that Barony looks and you're in first person all the time, I forget what gender I am most of the time anyway. we are pretty much getting to the end of the video, I believe. So I shall say the usual bits and pieces now. If you have liked, please press the like button. If you wish to subscribe, please press the subscription button. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter at the links provided below, and you can always comment. I am very, very happy to read and reply if I am able. It makes my day when I see people enjoying my videos. If there's any other kinds of games or videos you'd like to see me play, I am doing a Assault and Sanctuary series at the moment, alongside some RimWorld and Pixel Piracy. I am considering doing some Battle Brothers, which is a really interesting sort of XCOM meets Mountain Blade Warband game, which is coming towards the end of its, I suppose you call it like beta access period or early access. I won't say it's early access because the game is pretty well along its development cycle. So, but yeah, everything's going really well. I had a really fun time playing with the Fuax. He's always a really great guy to play with, and I shall leave you to see how he gets on. Goodbye.